to have this war zone transformed back into a working train station by this weekend. In Austin, New York, I'm Glenn Thompson for the WB11 News at 10.
Long Island managed to dodge Floyd's fast-moving bullet yesterday and woke up with less damage than officials had expected. The North Shore was hit the worst along its Nassau-Suffolk County border. Trees down, power lines leaving 128,000 customers in the dark over the last 24 hours. Phone service has also been knocked out. LIPA's chairman says at least 5,000 more outages can be expected because of high winds and falling trees. Over on the South Shore at Point Lookout Beach, there was considerable beach erosion.
We lost between 50 and 80,000 cubic yards of sand, and this was with a moderate storm.
Fire Island, which evacuated about 1,500 people, escaped with only damage to some homes in Atlantic.
Utility crews have been working round the clock trying to restore power to thousands of people left in the dark. Last check, here are the number of outages we can report. Orange and Rockland counties reporting 32,000 outages. Con Ed is reporting over 10,700 people are without service. And in New Jersey, PSE&G is reporting that 82,000 homes are still in the dark. As we know now, there are some major flooding problems throughout New Jersey. It may not be until Sunday morning before power is completely restored.
Well, Floyd dumped so much rain on North Carolina. And Mayor Giuliani, by the way, had no regrets about his actions to warn residents and commuters about the possible dangers posed by Floyd. Grand Central Terminal was quite crowded at mid-afternoon yesterday after Giuliani recommended that businesses close early and that all non-essential government workers be sent home.
Great shape, and the fact is that having considerably less people moving at any one time, particularly during rush hour, I think was, in retrospect, a very, very good idea given the problems that Metro North had. Just think of
the mayor also congratulated the emergency management team for their preparations.
And Floyd dumped so much rain on North Carolina, the storm created one of the state's worst ever natural disasters. Emergency workers using boats and helicopters have had to rescue hundreds of people. And as Grant Rampey tells us, not everyone made it out alive.
Rescue crews lift the body of an elderly man from floodwaters today. This is video of him yesterday in his van as he tried to make it through a submerged stretch of interstate. The highway patrol raced in to throw him a rope, but it was too late. The van was swept into a gully with water 15 feet deep.
I know they want to get home and they want to go and look at their property, but it's not worth one's life.
For many, getting home has been all but impossible, and floodwaters continue to rise. Meanwhile, many who stayed home during the storm are finding they can't get out. In some parts, freshly formed lakes cover homes, farms, even an entire shopping mall. From Oak Island in the south part of the state to Rocky Mount in the northeast corner, Floyd's made this place a mess.
From what I understand, it was 54 since last time water was up anywhere close to this.
Suddenly, hundreds of neighborhoods are cut off to cars and trucks. Paddle boats are proving their worth.
About 3 foot deep.
The more than 3,000 National Guardsmen who've come in to help have their hands full, and with power still cut off for up to 400,000 people, many say drying out after Floyd could take weeks, maybe months. I'm standing next to the Cape Fear River here in North Carolina, where it's predicted the water level could rise between 4 and 12 feet overnight, causing still more flooding tomorrow. So the worst may not be over yet. In Wilmington, North Carolina, Grant Rampey, WB11 News at 10.
And flooded out residents of one North Carolina community are thanking the National Guard after some dramatic and very terrifying rescues. Heavy rain from Tropical Storm Floyd drove the Tar River near Dunbar, North Carolina, as much as 13 feet above flood stage. Military helicopters hoisted people from the tops of cars and rooftops of homes. Small boats also used in the rescue operation. By Friday afternoon, military helicopters had rescued 400 people.
And still to come, tonight's other news, a deadly accident in Manhattan. A crane comes crashing to the ground, killing a construction worker.
A horse goes on a wild ride through the streets of Manhattan until cops catch up with him.
Plus,
no, wait until that river recedes. Outside now in the Midtown area, it is currently holding a 63, humidity 58, northwest 6. The split high and low 72 and 59. All right, everybody, let's get set for your weekend. Right now, it's 64 degrees, 63 White Plains, 59 in Poughkeepsie, 62 degrees in Islip. Who do you know in West Hampton, where it is 63 degrees? This is a radar, believe it or not, leftover moisture swinging across the hills of New England. We're clearing out nicely. Cloud line to the north of the city, so let's get it going. First of all, for Saturday. It looks real good because when you take a look at the radar, you can see streams of moisture. Goodbye, New England. Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Gulf of Mexico. That's ours, and that's good for the next 48 to 72 hours. So it's tan time once again. You'll be able to get a great weekend coming up. It's nothing but sun, acres of it, from the Ohio Valley all the way back 1-2 time zones, so we're okay. A couple of scattered showers way out west may affect us by Tuesday, but not until then. Gert, there it is. There's the eye of the storm. There's a swing in the latest computer guidance to north and west at 7 miles per hour. You got to like that. May threaten Bermuda, but again, that swing takes it away. Parallel to the mainland will not affect us. It's clear, it's nice, it's lovely. How about some good adjectives? 54 to 59, north and west 48 to 53. Everybody outdoors over the weekend. Golden sunshine, very pleasant. Let's go to Sal's house. 73 to 78 degrees. Your 5-day forecast. I like Saturday. I like Sunday. Add a little sun symbol to Monday, okay? I have a lot of clouds, but I hit the wrong button on the computer. That's what happened. Well, these things happen. It's been a long week, but it's going to be a great week.
Lancome reinvents radiance with activated vitamin C. Introducing VitaBelique Deep Radiance Booster. For the first time, pure vitamin C, ginseng, and ginkgo are delivered deep into skin surface in a gel creme so extraordinary it actually recharges skin from within. For radiance you can see, new VitaBelique Deep Radiance Booster from Lancome Paris. Discover VitaBelique and choose your gift with any 1950 Lancome purchase. Now at Macy's.
7's got it live. Winning numbers for Take 5 next on Eyewitness News.
This is the news leader, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
Tonight, the aftermath of Floyd. He may be gone, but he is far from forgotten as hundreds of thousands of people remain flooded out without power, without phone service, and with little idea of when they'll be able to go back home.
Good evening. I'm Bill Butel.
And I'm Diana Williams.
At this time last night, we had no idea whatsoever that Tropical Storm Floyd would do so very much damage to our area. All it took, though, was one look at daylight to see that New Jersey and parts of New York are disaster areas. The fallout from Floyd is felt hardest in New Jersey, where in the community of Bound Brook, people had to be rescued from their flooded homes by helicopters and boats all day long. The water is so high in Lodi, New Jersey, many streets have been closed down to cars. And in Rockland County, overflowing creeks have taken their toll on that area, in one case almost pulling a home off its foundation. We have the entire area covered, beginning with New Jersey. Lucy Yang is live in Bound Brook. Good evening, Lucy.
Good evening, Bill. The waters are beginning to pull back. Streets are beginning to dry, but in certain areas, the best mode of transportation remains a boat, as some streets are still deep enough to drown a child. Now, power is still out in the flooded areas, and there are still scattered fires in this community, which firefighters cannot access because of all the water. As residents come to grips with this nightmare, I have to tell you, going through Bound Brook at times is surreal. Earlier this evening, I saw a fish swimming down a residential street. We went out with the Port Authority police tonight on board their rafts to survey the damage. These are just snapshots of the loss to this community. The local watering hole, a washout. The bike shop, the auto parts store, torn apart. While the water is beginning to drain, at times we were best off wading through the streets. The fact is, it is still a mess. Cars remain submerged. Too bad they couldn't float like this child's toy truck. Front yards converted to moats. Fences as frail as a house of cards. Homes themselves not much more stable. The soccer field now fit for water polo as massive flooding ravaged this borough. For better or worse, this young couple went ahead with their wedding rehearsal tonight. On the eve of their big day, the only light in the church came from the Port Authority's generator. At shelters, there was nothing to celebrate as families lost all their worldly possessions.
We got over 10 feet of water when I left my house. I couldn't take my cat. My kids are devastated.
With parts of New Jersey declared a federal disaster area, Governor Whitman tried to lend a consoling hand to the now homeless, but there are no words of comfort at a time like this.
And stand ready and able to assist people, the Department of Health and Senior Services, with insurance questions, with temporary housing, which I'm afraid for some people is going to be longer rather than shorter term temporary housing.
It has been one dramatic rescue after another. At least 800 victims have been saved from the rising waters. One fellow hanging onto a drum for dear life, others flagging down help from their rooftops. They used choppers, they used boats. A kayak became this best friend's best way out. What you're looking at is bubbling water in the middle of an intersection here, and that is where the water is draining out here on Talmadge Avenue. Already the flood of 99 is turning into a sea of 1,000 sad tales. Governor Whitman today spoke already of 2 deaths, an elderly man and woman, both in their 80s, claimed by the floods. One rescue worker told me this evening they fear the worst is yet to come. The streets are expected to dry up by tomorrow, and that's when they will go door to door searching for any more possible bodies inside these homes. We're live in Bound Brook tonight. Lucy Yang for ABC7 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Lucy. Other parts of New Jersey were not spared the fallout from Floyd. The problem everywhere does seem to be the flooding, as you saw from Lucy. In Lodi, elderly people stranded in their homes by floodwaters were actually evacuated by boat, many of them wearing life preservers. And in Piscataway, one man whose car was stranded in high waters actually climbed in on the roof to get inside of his car. Others had to bail out the water in their cars with cups. In New York, the governor is asking for federal help. Between 12 and 16 inches of rain fell on some parts of the lower Hudson Valley. Tomorrow, Governor Pataki will tour storm-damaged areas, but today he declared a state of emergency for severely damaged areas, and he has asked President Clinton to declare parts of the state disaster areas.
What we are doing now is we have more than 1,000 National Guard troops working with local and other officials, and we're confident we're going to get through this.
Rockland County was one area that was hard hit by Floyd's fury. The storm downed trees, flooded streets, and caused power outages that continue even tonight. NJ Burkett has more on that part of the story.
The people of Piermont, New York woke up and found their entire village caked in mud.
When I first saw it when I came home, I thought, oh my God, it looks like a California earthquake. I couldn't believe it.
The force of the storm sent one family's backyard sliding downhill into the backyard of their neighbors.
All of a sudden I heard this popping and cracking from on the mountain, and I seen the trees starting to wobble. And next thing I know, it just turned into mud and came down.
The huge mudslide tumbled into the center of town, where public works crews shoveled out the streets and neighbors shoveled out their driveways.
In my 42 years, I've never seen anything like this. Damages, I would estimate, probably in the millions for the village of Piermont. It's going to take us quite some time to extract ourselves out of this.
The storm's raw power was frightening. Floodwaters blew apart this dam in Spring Valley, and this morning, 2 miles downstream, police recovered the body of a 53-year-old man who had been walking home after his car stalled. This morning, Governor Pataki appealed for federal disaster aid. The storm uprooted 300-year-old trees. This church was nearly destroyed. Huge power lines went down.
Homes are devastated, and we know that, and we're going to do everything we can to help.
Oh, you were near that fire, and at the same time, the water had already risen to the second floor of your house.
Right.
So you're worried both about the fire spreading to your home and the water.
More than that, because I figured we still had the attic to go to.
And at this hour, there are still some people unaccounted for, whether they are just still stranded out there in the dark in their homes, or worse, that there are more fatalities, may not become clear at all until these flood waters finally recede and reveal what's under them. Chuck, back to you.
Thank you, Ralph. A broken dam, swollen creeks, and downed trees also forced hundreds from
roofs and was lived over and over in Bound Brook today. For some people, the rescues in police boats happened nearly 24 hours ago when the Raritan River started rising quickly. Nearly 1,000 people found shelter in the local high school after escaping the swirling waters. Most everyone has lost major possessions, but all were grateful to be alive.
Travel troubles continue in our area tonight, with many rail lines knocked out of service by the storm. On Metro North, they're working to clean mud and debris from the tracks in Ossining. They hope to have the Harlem and Hudson lines back in operation this weekend. On New Jersey Transit, the Boonton and Pascack Valley lines will be out until Monday, and the Port Jervis line may be out even longer. Right now, there's no Amtrak service between New York and Albany. Service is also suspended between Penn Station and Philadelphia. Amtrak hopes to get things rolling again tomorrow. Telephone and power outages continue to plague hundreds of thousands of people in our area tonight. Right now, crews are pumping water from the flooded AT&T Northeast switching station in Rochelle Park.
Residents said a fast-moving wall of mud and water careened toward them.
All of this completely flooded, muddy, and it actually looked like a river, because it was, crashing, and it was very scary.
In addition to the widespread flooding in Rockland County, downed trees knocked down power lines.
18,000 Rockland County homes are still without power. Federal emergency or FEMA officials will tour tomorrow to see if Rockland County will be declared a federal disaster area. Now we have a message from United Water for residents of Rockland, Bergen, and Hudson County. The message is, please only use your water for drinking.
Their cars and their homes out. And New York Governor George Pataki declared a disaster emergency for Rockland County as well, for New York City, Westchester, and for Suffolk County. So it has not been the most pleasant situation. Even though Floyd has departed, we're still dealing with the rain and a little bit of wind. Now I want to show you the rainfall amounts just to show you why we're seeing so much flooding. This is just a sample of some of the record rainfalls that we've seen, but the rain was very widespread and very heavy throughout much of the Mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast, and New England. For instance, Chestertown, Maryland, 14 inches of rain, and in Brewster, New York, over 13 inches of rain, almost 14. So you get a sense of just how widespread the rain was. The good news is the rain is tapering off, and the flooding is also beginning to recede somewhat. We only have a few counties in Connecticut, southern areas of New York, and also northern areas of New Jersey that are still seeing flood warnings, but we are beginning to see a lot of these creeks and rivers subside somewhat. Now, Floyd got basically absorbed into this area of low pressure here. Floyd doesn't exist anymore, but with this area of low pressure still here and the wraparound moisture behind it, we're still seeing some scattered light rain, mainly in eastern Maine, and a little bit of light rain as well here in New Hampshire. And it's heading off toward the south. But the rainfall totals are fairly inconsequential, maybe 1/10 of an inch or so. The only thing that's really causing us additional problems this evening is the winds. It's still kind of breezy out there, particularly in eastern Massachusetts and on up toward Maine. At times, winds gusting over 30 miles an hour. Generally, winds sustained between 15 and 25 miles per hour. As you can see, the winds have calmed down across Long Island, but it's still kind of breezy around Boston, where at times we're seeing the winds around 33 miles an hour. The winds will continue to subside somewhat by tomorrow, but it's going to be a very slow process. There's another consequence of the very windy conditions, the gale warnings that remain in effect from Maine down toward Massachusetts. The good news is tomorrow should be a much better day with that low pressure moving out and high pressure building in behind it. We'll see sunshine, but we'll also see our pressure gradient relax, and that means lighter winds tomorrow. So a drier day and a calmer day for the Northeast and New England. Now here's Warren with a look at what's happening around the rest of the country.
Let's take a look at what is happening around the rest of the nation. And if you are watching me from anywhere from the Great Lakes southward to the Gulf Coast, you had a simply glorious day on Friday as high pressure kept you sun-filled skies, pleasant temperatures north.
The storm that we see in the satellite picture looks like it's out there all by itself, but it really isn't. It's embedded in an atmosphere that's composed of a lot of other features.
Another one of those features, the high-level jet stream winds, which weakened Floyd as it moved toward the east coast.
The jet stream winds are a very large-scale influence. They're like a river of air.
The jet stream actually blew the top off of the hurricane and distorted its perfect spiral shape, which is what normally allows the air in it to gather so much force. That meant that when the storm finally made landfall in North Carolina Thursday morning, its winds had dropped to 110 miles an hour, much lower than the 150-mile-an-hour winds that whipped across the Bahamas. But if the U.S. mainland escaped some of the wind, it did not avoid the water. Floyd produced a storm surge of floodwaters that reached miles inland.
The surge of the water coming in ahead, we're not talking about 10 to 13 feet possibly. That's bigger than we've had in the past.
A storm surge is caused by the extreme low pressure in the center of a hurricane. The low pressure acts like a vacuum, sucking ocean water in from the surrounding area and creating a mound of water that crashes ashore along with the storm, forcing residents to flee to higher ground.
He is 2.5 months, and this is his second hurricane already.
1999 has been one of the most active hurricane seasons in years. Hurricane Brett slammed into South Texas in late August. Dennis flirted with the Carolinas for a week before heading out to sea. And now Floyd.
We expect this is going to continue.
Right now, forecasters are watching Hurricane Gert, which formed off Africa early in the week and is headed across the Atlantic. And the source of all this hurricane activity? You've heard it before, La Nina.
Some of the biggest hurricanes that affected the East Coast have been during La Nina summers.
During El Nino years, the jet stream takes a southerly path across the United States. It interferes with hurricane formation in the tropical Atlantic, making for relatively quiet conditions. But La Nina pushes the jet stream winds to the north, allowing hurricanes to form and drift westward without interruption.
But it's not the only thing that's happening. We also have a warm tropical Atlantic. That, combined with the winds in the Atlantic, give us a set of conditions that are very favorable for the formation of tropical storms and hurricanes.
And it's far from over. The midpoint of the hurricane season was only a week ago, and forecasters expect that the second half will be just as active as the first. Ned Potter, ABC News.
When we come back, from outer space to the eye of the storm. This season, the dramatic lengths scientists go to track a killer hurricane. Load gauges, wind monitors, and strain sensors. A unique research site.
They interact.
The models have made a huge difference to the job of forecasting, but even with all that computers can do, predicting hurricanes remains an inexact science.
Category 5 hurricane, Category 4 hurricane, one of the things that is relatively weak in the forecasting skill today is to say how strong is it going to be. And not able to predict with a high degree of confidence how the intensity is going to change.
For the most part, though, Floyd matched the meteorologist's forecasts. Millions saw this, a monster of a storm moving their way, and they headed inland. It was the power of prediction in the face of one very powerful storm. Bob Woodruff, ABC News, Miami, Florida.
Coming up, the home built to be battered. In an extreme experiment, scientists wire.
But this century alone, there have been dozens of hurricanes even stronger and more deadly, including one hurricane with no name that killed 8,000 people.
Ned Potter reports.
On the morning of September 8, 1900, Galveston, Texas was one of the richest cities in the United States, filled with mansions and some 40,000 residents. But that night, a hurricane struck the city with diabolical force.
My grandfather said it sounded like 1,000 demons screaming in the night.
Linda McDonald, who lives in Galveston today, learned a fear of hurricanes from her grandfather. He survived the 1900 storm.
He said he could hear children calling for their mothers, and he would hear women screaming for help, and he'd hear men begging for mercy from God.
Thomas Edison sent a film crew to capture these rare images. As many as 8,000 people were killed and 3,000 homes destroyed. There had been almost no warning and no evacuation. It is still the worst natural disaster in U.S. history. Horror was piled upon horror. A Catholic orphanage had stood on the beachfront. 90 children were dead.
The sisters had tried to save the children by tying them to themselves, and each sister tied to herself between 6 and 8 children.
What made the Galveston hurricane so lethal was its storm surge, a near-biblical deluge of water driven by low air pressure and 100-mile-an-hour winds.
The most dangerous thing about any hurricane is the storm surge.
Eric Larson has written about the lessons of the Galveston disaster.
It was the Galveston hurricane that really, for the first time, taught the Weather Bureau that the thing you want to worry about in a hurricane is not the wind per se, it's the storm surge.
A storm surge can be a hurricane's brass knuckles, landing its most vicious punches. In 1938, a storm surge savaged the northeast coast, flooding Providence, Rhode Island.
A hurricane in New England.
31 years later, Hurricane Camille drove a 20-foot tidal wave onto the Mississippi coast, killing 250 people. And in 1989, Hugo's storm surge hammered Charleston, South Carolina, in what was then the costliest storm in history. But no storm surge in the United States has rivaled the sheer destruction of Galveston.
Galveston, although no one seemed to realize at the time, was acutely suited to a really devastating storm surge.
Galveston was defenseless before the approaching hurricane, a city at sea level with no seawall and with treacherously shallow coastal waters.
The beach is a long, shallow slope, perfect for having this storm surge come along and build and build and build, kind of like Godzilla climbing out of the harbor.
After Galveston, the hurricane continued its rampage. A low-pressure system sucked the hurricane north, slicing across the entire United States.
By the time it hit Buffalo, New York, it was back at hurricane speed, 75-mile-an-hour winds. When this storm was in Nova Scotia, Midtown Manhattan, New York was getting 60-mile-an-hour winds from the storm system. It was that massive a system.
I mean, to me, the most obvious lesson you'd learn after a catastrophe like that is don't live near the sea.
Bill Reed is a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. Although Galveston is now protected with a seawall and scientists can better predict a hurricane's arrival, a mighty storm surge would still be devastating.
Now we have all this development along Galveston Bay. We have up to a quarter of the nation's refining capability or in plants that are along Galveston Bay. We have the Johnson Space Center. It's along Galveston Bay. And we have several 100,000 people live in communities that are in the potential storm surge zone. And do they all know that they're in the threat zone? I'm not sure.
Linda McDonald says Hurricane Floyd reminds her of her grandfather and why he retold the story of the deadliest natural disaster in America's history.
My grandfather said that when you know what happened in Galveston during the 1900 storm, then every night before you go to bed, you hug your family. Then you thank God, because it could all be changed. It could all be gone overnight, the way it was that weekend in September in 1900.
99 years ago this month. Ned Potter, ABC News.
That's all for this special edition of the program. I'm Steve Avison. Join us next week for more Discovery News.
Many with a big cleanup job ahead. Hello and welcome to this edition of Weather Center. I'm Warren Madden.
And I'm Terry Smith. Floyd has left behind a legacy of destruction which includes billions of dollars in damage, lives lost, families displaced, power outages, and more. To say they had too much flooding in Franklin, North Carolina is just a bit of an understatement. Many neighborhoods here are completely submerged by floodwaters. Floyd dumped more than 17 inches on this region, and authorities report as many as 300 roads were closed at the height of the storm. For many, it's a matter of not enough water. Over 100,000 people in Portsmouth, Chesapeake, and Suffolk had no clean drinking water because a pump. And in the state of New York, the community of Rockland found themselves buried in mud. Residents here are still digging out their cars and homes. New York Governor George Pataki declared a disaster emergency for Rockland County as well as for New York City, Westchester County, and also Suffolk County. And this was a very widespread flooding situation. You probably got that impression just by looking at the video. But look at these rainfall amounts. These are places that had never seen this much rain on this date in September before. And some of them, it was only 3 inches in Connecticut, for instance. But that just goes to show you how unusual it is. Some of these places hadn't ever seen this much rainfall in one day. And those are the places where you see the asterisks here. Now I'm going to give you a sample of some of the rainfall totals, and you can just look it over. You can see how much rainfall there was. But what I'm trying to show here is just how broad an area of the United States had heavy rain. So when we get that much rain, obviously, it's not too surprising that we had some flood problems. Here's the good news, though. No more flood watches, just a few flood warnings here, Connecticut, southern sections of New York, northern New Jersey, and conditions continue to improve. So we should start to see some of the rivers and creeks in this region begin to recede here in the short term. And part of the reason that's happening is because we've seen the rain tapering off. Floyd, the remnants of Floyd, got absorbed into this area of low pressure here. We're still seeing some rain wrapping around behind the low pressure system throughout Maine and parts of New Hampshire, but for the most part the rainfall is light. As you can see here, we are picking up some rain around Bangor and just south of Portland and also in some eastern areas of New Hampshire. But again, as I mentioned, the rainfall here very light. If anything to accumulate between now and the mid-morning hours. Tomorrow it'll be about 1/10 of an inch or so of rainfall. We do continue, however, to deal with the wind. And so because of that, the thing we